Colombian citizens are mobilizing in the main cities of the country as part of the 29th day of nationwide anti-government demonstrations. In Brazil, unions and social movements mobilized to demand mass vaccination against COVID-19, as well as urgent measures to tackle hunger in the country. Polling stations have closed across Syria following a huge turnout in this Wednesday's presidential elections. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, I'm Katrina Goss. Colombian citizens are mobilizing in the main cities of the country as part of the ongoing demonstrations in the framework of the national strike, which reached its 29th day of peaceful protests this Wednesday. The National Strike Committee called to carry out the biggest mobilization in the country from the municipalities to the capitals of each department this Wednesday in order to strengthen the process for negotiations with the government on the list of emergency petitions. The leadership of the country's largest trade union federation, the Central Union of Workers, which forms part of the strike committee, called to reinforce the protests this Wednesday and also on Friday, which will mark 1 month since the mobilizations began. Among the activities to be held are cultural and recreational events, the banging of pots and pans as part of evening protests, and other peaceful initiatives. And Tuesday night saw new episodes of repression against demonstrators in the Colombian capital by the mobile anti-riot squadron and the police. Police forces carried out arrests of young people in the neighbourhood La Igualdad, with several social media users denouncing that officers launched tear gas inside the residential area where children and senior citizens were present. Likewise, human rights organisation Lazos de Dignidad warned that the anti-riot squadron attacked protesters gathered at what they have established as a humanitarian space, serving as a focal point of the mobilisations in the city. Meanwhile, the National Strike Committee accused President Ivan Duque of delaying negotiations to find answers to popular demands. In a meeting held on Monday, a pre-agreement in relation to the state guarantees for peaceful protests was reached as a means to begin fresh talks, but the Governmental Commission postponed the signing of the agreement until Thursday. And staying in Colombia, in the midst of protests in Tuluá in the department of Valle del Cauca, a fire was reported on Tuesday night at the Municipal Palace of Justice. According to police reports, the flames devastated a good part of the roof and the second floor of the judicial institution of the city, located north of Cali. The police blamed protesters for the blaze, but several political organisations and social media users accused violent groups who are not part of the demonstrations of starting the fire in order to blame peaceful protesters. On Tuesday, Tuluá saw clashes between the security forces and groups of protesters, with a young man, Camilo Arango, killed in the repression. There was also an attack against the headquarters of the prosecutor's office in the city. Neighbouring Cali and the department of Valle del Cauca have been the epicentre of protests and social mobilisations against President Ivan Duque for almost a month, in which at least 43 people have been killed by the security forces and hundreds remain missing. The InterAmerican Court of Human Rights has condemned the human rights violations committed by the government of President Ivan Duque during the protests that began on April 28th. The statements came after a meeting held in the United States between the Colombian Vice President and Foreign Minister, Marta Lucía Ramírez, the President of the InterAmerican Court, Antonia Urejola, and other top officials of the judicial institution. During the talks, the Colombian Vice President refused to allow an international commission to investigate alleged human rights violations in the country during the protests. In response, the court issued a statement reporting the murders of protesters, disappearances and sexual assaults as a consequence of the disproportionate use of force by Colombian security forces.
We have at this moment the request of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, the request of Secretary Almagro himself. We have told Secretary Almagro that we welcome all visits, but at this moment we have to wait for the government authorities to finish their task, investigate each case and organize the plans for the next few weeks for any of the visits. The Secretary's visit that we denied and the Inter-American Court of Human Rights that we have also said no to.
Ivan Duque has become the most unpopular president in Colombia's history, according to the latest poll revealed on Tuesday. Pollster Invamer revealed that Duque has reached a 76% disapproval rating amid widespread unrest for almost a month, marked by police brutality, the disappearances of demonstrators and ongoing violations of human rights. The figures surpassed those of former President Andrés Pastrana, who reached 74% disapproval after failing to dialogue with guerrilla forces during his term from 1999 to 2000. Moreover, Duque's popularity in May plummeted compared to February, when the president was rejected by 59% of those questioned. The poll analysed in particular the reaction to the national strike, including the days before the social unrest broke out in urban areas. Along with Duque, Vice President Marta Lucía Ramírez also saw her support fall, with her disapproval rating rising from 40% in February to 59% in May. In Mexico, a contender for mayor of the municipality of Moroleón in the state of Guanajuato was assassinated on Tuesday. According to local media, Alma Barragán was attacked by gunmen during a rally in which she was participating with the residents of the municipality ahead of the parliamentary and regional elections of June 6. The prosecutor's office of Guanajuato informed on Twitter that it had assigned a group of experts for the investigation, clarification and arrest of the accused of the crime. Despite President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's announcement of a strategy to protect candidates during the current electoral process, gang violence and drug cartel rivalry continue to jeopardize the safety of political figures. Barragán's murder brings the number of politicians killed so far in the electoral campaign that began in September 2020 to 88. And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. This Wednesday in Brazil, unions and social movements mobilised to demand mass vaccination against COVID-19, as well as urgent measures to fight hunger in the country. Protesters demanded that government authorities speed up the procedures at a time when the country has reached 16 million confirmed cases and more than 450,000 deaths since the beginning of the pandemic. Demonstrators also demanded proper economic aid, since what has been established to date by the government is not enough to cover their most basic needs. Despite these demands, President Jair Bolsonaro continues to downplay the risks of the pandemic and refuses to apply measures to stop the spread of the virus, which, according to social movements, has contributed to the severe health crisis affecting the country. And we stay in Brazil, where the health ministry recorded more than 73,000 new COVID-19 infections and 2,000 fatalities in the last 24 hours. The ministry also pointed out an increase in the number of infected people in recent weeks, registering more than 66,000 per day. Experts continue to warn of the massive risk as the country is in the midst of a third wave, while noting the continued holding of massive gatherings by the president.
Entre lo que los expertos denominan sobremortalidad o exceso de decesos y el balance oficial de muertos se debe a varios factores. Algunos países.
In Bolivia, the vaccination program against COVID-19 is moving forward. As of this Wednesday, vaccination was extended to people aged over 40. Health authorities said that urban public transport drivers will be included in this process. Authorities also reported that this stage of the coronavirus vaccination campaign will be implemented throughout the country as efforts continue to curb the spread of the virus. In the last 24 hours, Bolivia registered more than 3,000 new cases and 100 deaths. At an international level, the Bolivian government is promoting initiatives in favour of equitable distribution of vaccines against the coronavirus, as well as calling for the lifting of vaccine patents to allow for greater manufacturing. On Wednesday, China said the United States was spreading conspiracy theories and disinformation as the theory that the coronavirus emerged from a Wuhan lab was once again voiced.
Some people in the US are spreading conspiracy theories and disinformation such as a laboratory leak. This is a very disrespectful approach to the scientific spirit and research findings of the WHO expert team that undermines the global solidarity to fight the virus. If the US really wants full transparency, then it should, like China did, invite WHO experts to visit the US and investigate and open up Fort Detrick military base as early as possible, as well as all the biolabs the US has around the world.
On Wednesday, the second powerful cyclone to hit India in 2 weeks bore down on the east coast, sending hundreds of thousands of people scrambling for emergency shelters ahead of the devastating winds and rain. Cyclone Yaz became a very severe storm late Tuesday, and the Indian Met Department recorded gusts of up to 185 kilometers an hour when it hit the coast near the border between West Bengal and Odisha states. Amid fears that the storm could help spread the deadly coronavirus wave that has hit India in recent weeks, heavy rainfall lashed coastal villages and towns in the hours ahead of its arrival. Last week, Cyclone Tauti claimed at least 150 lives, including dozens of oil rig workers, as it lashed western India. Cyclones happen regularly in the northern Indian Ocean, but many scientists say they're becoming both more frequent and severe as climate change warms the sea. This Wednesday, President of Belaruss Alexander Lukashenko accused the opposition and enemies of his government of waging a war against him. According to the news agency Belta, the head of state met with deputies, members of the Council of the Republic and the Constitutional Commission, as well as senior officials of the executive and opinion leaders at Parliament to discuss the baseless accusations of Western countries, especially the European Union, regarding the diversion of a Ryanair plane from Athens to Minsk. Lukashenko insisted that the plane was rerouted due to a bomb threat and again invited Western countries and the European Union to participate in the investigations. On Thursday, the International Civil Aviation Organization, which groups 36 countries, will meet to discuss the incident.
По своим должностным обязанностям я должен был защитить людей. Я думал о безопасности страны. По своим.
On Wednesday, Switzerland announced it was ending talks with Brussels towards sealing a long-delayed cooperation agreement with the surrounding European Union. In a meeting with journalists, the president of the Swiss Confederation, Guy Parmelin, stated that Switzerland was ending negotiations on a framework agreement, a move that could jeopardize the country's relationship with its largest trading partner. On the other hand, the European Union had made no secret of its urgency to reach an agreement that allows it to unify a series of accords with Switzerland. The latest talks between the two parties hit an impasse after the EU refused to change its position on demands from President Parmelin to exclude key issues relating to state aid, wage protections and freedom of movement from the agreement.
Due to the results of the negotiations in recent months, the Federal Council considered that the discussions with the European Union in the areas of the EU Citizens' Rights Directive, salary protection and state aid did not lead to the necessary solutions.
In the Netherlands this Wednesday, a court ordered oil giant Shell to slash its greenhouse gas emission targets in a landmark victory for climate activists. Dubbed The People vs Shell, the case was launched in 2019 by the Netherlands branch of Friends of the Earth and is backed by 6 other groups and more than 17,000 Dutch citizens. The court ordered Shell to reduce its CO2 output and those of its suppliers and buyers by the end of 2030 by a net of 45% based on 2019 levels immediately. Climate groups had asked the court to impose a target, saying that Anglo-Dutch multinational Shell should meet emissions targets set out in the 2015 Paris Climate Accords. Shell had argued that it is making serious efforts to cut gas emissions, but that there is no legal basis for the case and that governments are responsible for meeting Paris targets. Friends of the Earth Netherlands, one of the groups leading the case, said in a statement ahead of the verdict that it was unique because it's the first time in history that judges have been asked to order a company to emit less CO2.
En van de toeleveranciers en de afnemers van die groep.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Polling stations have closed across Syria following a huge turnout in this Wednesday's presidential elections. Voters cast their ballots in more than 12,000 polling stations, and results are expected to be announced by Friday evening, 48 hours after the polls closed. Current Syrian President Bashar al-Assad is expected to win a fourth term in office. The head of state is facing former State Minister Abdallah Salim Abdallah and opposition candidate Mahmoud Mehi. Syria's Higher Judicial Committee for Elections announced the extension of the duration of voting for 5 extra hours until midnight in all polling stations in light of the huge turnout by voters. According to the electoral authorities, the voting day ran smoothly and without any incidents. And Syrian President Bashar al-Assad cast his vote at a polling station in the town of Zuma, just outside of the capital Damascus, this Wednesday. After casting his ballot, he stressed that the mobilization seen in recent weeks shows that Western criticism of the country's political system and presidential election is unfounded.
Given that it's our first visit to the town of Zuma after its liberation from rebel forces, we must congratulate the town on its liberation from the terrorists, on its return to the embrace of the homeland, and on the contribution along with their brothers and sisters in other liberated areas and those across the homeland, in restoring life to normal, even if gradually, and on participating in national elections, be it the recent legislative polls or today's presidential elections. This election and this popular reaction that we have seen affirms that the Syrian people is free.
On Wednesday, United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Egypt on the second day of a regional tour through the Middle East. Blinken's visit came a day after he held separate meetings with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. In Cairo, the top US diplomat met Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, as well as the Foreign Minister and other government officials, before flying on to Jordan for talks with King Abdullah II. The Secretary of State described Egypt and Jordan as central players in trying to bring calm to the region, claiming that Egypt played a crucial role in helping to broker the Israeli ceasefire, while Jordan has long been a voice for peace and stability in the region. An Israeli court on Wednesday postponed a hearing in a case that could see 2 Palestinian families expelled from their homes in occupied East Jerusalem's Syrian district so that Jewish settlers can move in. Wednesday's court session was delayed after the Palestinian families petitioned the Attorney General to weigh in on the matter, their lawyer Yassid Kawar said. The delayed hearing on the dispute comes less than 3 weeks after a similar case in the city's Sheikh Jarrah district sparked widespread protests that were heavily repressed by the Israeli occupation's police forces. Wednesday's court session was delayed after the Palestinian families petitioned the Attorney General to weigh in on the matter, according to their lawyer. Dozens who gathered outside the court to protest against the move to evict yet more Palestinians from their homes were violently repressed by Israeli police.
Courts have double moral standard and 2 systems. One system for Jews, one system for Palestinians. I do not have a lot of hopes about the decision here in the court, but we are here in order to bring this voice, this resistance to the whole international community, and to say it's political and it's national.
There are 88 families in Bad Alawa area in Silwa district, so a total of 700 people. The size of the land that they want to seize is 5 dunams. 1 dunam equals 1,000 meters squares and 200 meters. We will not evict, not under any decision. We will remain in that area where my father and mother were born and where we were raised.
I think it's wrong to throw people out of their homes. Like, everyone who lives in Jerusalem should have the same rights, and rights to a place, homes are a human right. Housing is a human right, and I don't think that it's okay that the government is taking away homes from some people, like, just at all.
This Wednesday, Mali's interim president and prime minister resigned just 2 days after they were arrested by the military, deepening the political crisis in the country that was sparked by a coup in August 2020. The head of a mediation team from the Economic Community of West African States, Goodluck Jonathan, confirmed the president's resignation. The United Nations, African Union, European Union and the United States issued a joint statement criticising the detention and demanding the release of the transitional government figures. The UN Security Council was set to hold a closed-door emergency meeting on Wednesday at the request of France and other nations. Last August, after weeks of demonstrations over perceived government corruption, young military officers ousted President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. In the face of condemnation from international powers and threats of sanctions, a transitional government was installed with a promise to return to civilian rule in 18 months. Former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan, leading a mediation team from the Economic Community of West African States to Mali, told journalists that talks were held with Mali's vice president about the release of the president and his prime minister after their arrest in an apparent second military coup in 9 months.
One of the issues you will want to know is about the detained people. The vice president told us that they are working out the mechanism of releasing them. Probably this evening they will issue a statement on that aspect. We didn't want to make much comment because they will give the details. In terms of what the structure of government will look like, we have not concluded. We are still consulting.
On Wednesday, South Africa's former president Jacob Zuma pleaded not guilty to the corruption, fraud, racketeering and money laundering charges against him. The former head of state has repeatedly rejected the charges, arguing that he's the victim of a politically motivated witch hunt by his opponents. The charges are related to a 1999 arms deal when he was deputy president. Zuma also faces a separate inquiry into corruption during his time as president from 2009 to 2018 and is accused of accepting money on an annual basis from the French arms company Thales in exchange for protecting the company from an investigation. The next hearing has been set for July 19th, and prosecutors are expected to call around 200 witnesses throughout the course of the trial.
You have followed the charges that have been put to you now from the indictment, am I correct?
Yes.
And no doubt, in consultation with your legal representatives, these charges have been explained to you. You understand what they entail?
Yes, I do. I heard them.
How do you plead to them?
I plead not guilty.
Thank you. You may be seated.
In northwest Nigeria, dozens of people were missing Wednesday after an overloaded boat ferrying around 160 passengers sank in the Niger River. Abdullahi Buhari Wara, administrative head of Nagaski district, said the boat left central Niger State and was heading to northwest Kebbi State when it split and sank. He added that a rescue operation was underway, but only 22 survivors and one dead body had been recovered so far. Boat capsizes are common on Nigerian waterways, mostly due to overcrowding and lack of maintenance, particularly in the annual rainy season. Early this month, 30 people drowned when an overloaded boat capsized in central Niger State. And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us for all the latest news on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. And you can catch up on our shows on our YouTube channel. For TeleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.